Thank you all for being here. I am Kelvin Jeremiah. I'm the president and CEO of the Philadelphia Housing Authority, the fourth largest housing authority in the country and the largest landlord in the Commonwealth. I want to begin first and foremost by expressing our deep, deep sorrow over the incredible and unimaginable loss that took place here yesterday morning. All of us at PHA are shaken. Our hearts are heavy, both for the loss of life and the families that have been now displaced in this tragedy, and most importantly for the 12 souls that lost their lives, 8 of whom are children and 4 adults. So our first priority has been to attend to the families who lost their loved ones and to the survivors. I have spoken to the surviving families from both units and have assured them of our full support in helping them in whatever way possible. We stand firmly with them during their time of grief, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that they have everything that they need, including a rehousing that has already been determined, identified rather. I also want to express my deep solidarity with, and frankly my thanks to the Philadelphia Fire Department and all of the first responders who arrived at the scene within minutes yesterday morning, and for the extraordinary efforts to help save lives. We appreciate you, we see you, we hear you, and we thank you for all that you do day in and day out for the residents of this great city. I would like to express the key issues. I would like to address, rather, some of the key issues that have been raised by many of you in the press since this horrific incident. First and foremost, this home that was destroyed in the fire yesterday is part of our scattered site portfolio. We have 4,000 of these similar type units scattered across the city of Philadelphia. These homes are owned by PHA throughout the city on blocks not unlike this one. They offer low-income families the opportunity to live in affordable homes in what is gentrifying neighborhoods that are quickly losing affordability. It is a philosophy that I think we are very proud of, one that we are standing firmly behind in giving folks of low income an opportunity to live in communities like this one that has a good, promising school only minutes from here, for example, and access to a whole host of amenities. I also want to take a minute to address the issue of the size of the unit with regard to the family composition. Our lease and agreement with the families indicate that 14 members, 14 authorized residents were supposed to be in Unit B. In Unit A, there was supposed to be 6 members. This is a time of year when family gather. We are not going to be critical of the families who have suffered this unimaginable loss. We are supporting them in their efforts. But the question of why there are so many families, let me be very clear. This is not unique to Philadelphia. It's not unique to the United States, frankly, in my own experience. It resonates in my own experience. We have intergenerational families. Here you have a grandmother who raised her 3 daughters, or raising her 3 daughters. Her 3 daughters are having children, and they all are living under the same roof. 3 generations living under the same roof. This was, in fact, an intact family who chose to live together. This is what we do. We don't kick out our family members, our loved ones, who may not have other suitable housing options. And this highlights an issue that I'm going to talk about briefly in a moment, the housing crisis that confronts Philadelphia and frankly that confronts the United States. So I wanted to be very clear about that. And I'm happy to take questions about that in a moment. So at the time that the family moved into this unit in 2011, it was a family of 6 in a 4-bedroom unit. The family had children, and the family grew, and our policies and procedures does not evict people because they have children. We don't remove them because their families are growing. The absurdity of that notion, I think, is self-explanatory. So the family grew between 2011 and 2021, adding about 8 children to the family household. So I want to make clear that this is a family that wanted to be together, and our mission is to provide safe, sanitary housing, and I think we did so in this case. With regard to the smoke alarms, I've seen a lot of reports, some conflicting and others aren't. So I want to be clear about that as well. As the inspection reports that we conducted in April and May of last year shows, there were in fact smoke detectors, and we in fact installed carbon monoxide detectors. Those detectors, and in fact reinstalled 2 at that occasion. And those were equipped with 10-year lithium batteries. Now, I'm not quite sure how you're able to ascertain that they were not in fact working. I imagine that the fire marshal's report would make that determination, and I will defer to them and their report to make that notification. But as far as I know, at the time that we did our inspections, these equipment were fully operational. And the family, in fact, attested to that in signing the inspection reports. Let me also add that in any of our new developments that we're doing all across the city, and in any of our substantially rehabbed units, we are in fact hardwiring our smoke detectors, smoke alarms, carbon monoxide. These are where we're using the battery operated ones in accordance with city code. These are only in our older units and older apartments. And so that is the case, perfectly appropriate. In my home, I have them as well, and then probably in yours as well. I do want to emphasize and make this note to all of our families who might be seeing and hearing me on the radio and watching on television. If you have any issue with your fire alarms, if it doesn't have batteries, if it needed to be replaced, please contact our customer response center, and they will be happy to provide you with a new alarm, come in and install new alarms, and provide you with batteries, provide batteries in your detectors. And so with that, I think there are a couple of more things I want to add in a minute, but I would ask Congressman Dwight Evans if he had a few comments to make. I'll defer to him. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. This is a terrible tragedy for these families. The Fairmont neighborhood and all of our city feels an awful lot of pain. This is something that we all have to work together. So certainly, as Kelvin has just described, I too add my voice to the families that are still alive in there, and we stand here and be helpful. I share with you 2 federal agencies that have been very involved in this. As Kelvin talked about the issue of affordable housing, HUD, the Secretary of HUD, who I know someone very well, really cares about what happens, not just here in Philadelphia, but across this nation. And we know that affordable housing is one of the challenges, and that the President and the Vice President, just this year in the discussion of Build Back Better, of affordable housing, that is a priority. That is something that we all are working on to achieve. So as Kelvin just described, this is something that is not just unique to the city of Philadelphia, but the entire nation. It is something that we all have to address, and we have to do something about affordable housing. The other issue of the organization I want to thank is the ATF. They have numerous agents involved, being a part of trying to help out with investigating and necessarily trying to find solutions. Those 2 agencies have really been around the clock in their involvement. So my ability of standing here is to stand with PHA and to show that they have the support, as from the Secretary of HUD, from the ATF, as well as from the President and the Vice President. This is very painful, and it is not easy. It will take this kind of effort to do something, working with the city council, working with the mayor, all of us working together. So I share with you, this is something we know we have to do, and we know we have to make corrections. Again, I'd like to yield back, Cal.
Want to say a few words?
To the President of the Council.
Thank you, Congressman. This is Jeremiah. Stood here yesterday, at a loss for words, pretty much feel the same today. Tragic event, monumental proportions. Anybody that knows little kids, has grandkids, you can feel it right here. Serious gut punch, another one. It's just really sad. We said yesterday that we asked people to please wait until the facts come out about the particular incident. You know, there was all sorts of speculation. And I want to say, I'm asking people not to stigmatize the Philadelphia Housing Authority and its residents, because I heard a lot of ugly things being said about, you know, the fact that because people lived in public housing, that there were supposed to be different rules for them. And frankly speaking, the rules for the public housing are a little more strict as it relates to occupancy and all the other things. We checked with the license inspection and found some things in terms of the number of people that are allowed to be in a building at the famed family. And the history in the city is my understanding that years ago there used to be an occupancy limit of the same family members, but because of the change in the cultural diversity of our city and of our country, they got sued because other cultures believe in having a family union. Other cultures believe in having intergenerational types of units. So they had to back off of that. So I just ask that first and foremost, we deal with the tragedy before us. I want to thank the Philadelphia Police, first responders, our fire department, the ATF for their diligent and quick response, and they continue to do their work down the street. I want to thank the Housing Authority for continuing to provide affordable housing. And let's focus at this moment, and I know there has to be all these conversations about who, what, when, but right now we really need to deal with this family, to make this family whole, to deal with these children, and to deal with this community, because this community is also hurting. So thank you, Kelvin. All right.
And thank you, Council President Clark and Congressman Evans. I want to end with this. there is no secret, I don't believe, that there is an affordable housing crisis that confronts this great city and that confronts the United States. No secret. We have at PHA some $1.5 billion in deferred capital and maintenance needs. More funding is needed to address the incredible capital needs that we have and the incredible affordable housing demands that we have. We do not get enough to do that. And so while all of this is happening, the conditions in our nation's public housing is deteriorating. In some cases, it's abysmal. You look anywhere across this country, from New York to LA to Seattle to Florida, you name the city, the conditions of affordable housing, of the nation's public housing, is just in a disgusting state. And at Philadelphia Housing Authority, we have in fact been investing heavily in rebuilding that infrastructure, in addressing and preserving affordable housing all across the city, building sustainable communities, and we are very, very proud of what has been referred to as the Philadelphia model, where we are getting partners, public-private partnerships, to help us in expanding the availability of affordable housing and in preserving affordable housing in the city. So while the conditions are deteriorating nationally, our families wait and wait and wait. They can wait no more. It has become a question of life and death for too many families, and this unfortunate, unimaginable tragedy highlights that in some real ways. And so I'm really appreciative of my congressional friends. I'm appreciative of the calls that I received from HUD and from our nationally elected leaders, all offering support and all asking, frankly, what they can do. So I'm going to call on President Biden. I'm going to call on my Republican friends in Congress. The president has proposed an ambitious Build Back Better program. If Build Back Better was here, we would be building more units. We will be addressing the affordable housing crisis. We'll be preserving the units that are slipping away from Philadelphia every single year. And so I'm asking, if you want to support Philadelphia Housing Authority, if you want to support what this family might be going through, and you have an understanding that 14 people might want more units or better units, might want some other housing options, I'm going to ask President Biden, I'm going to ask my good friend here, let's support the president's agenda and let's vote for and enact Build Back Better. This is what we need to make a difference here in Philadelphia, to address the affordable housing crisis that confronts us. It would be the most significant investment in affordable housing in more than 3 generations since the 1940s. I think we can do it. I think we can solve the affordable housing crisis. But it requires, in my view, coordinated effort, real investment, meaningful investment, especially on the part of the federal government. And so with that, I'm going to take a few questions. Hang on a second. One at a time, please. Yes.
The district attorney has made a court filing asking to get access to that building. In the search warrant, or in the information it files, it says a 5-year-old likely set the Christmas tree on fire. Is that your understanding of what happened there?
I cannot comment. As you know, that this is an active investigation. I'm deferring to the ATF, the fire marshal, now the district attorney's office and the U.S. attorney's office to make those determinations. I will not comment on the active investigation.
Jeremiah, the PHA has done a better job in showing the compassion that they did for expanding families and the fire hazard of having so many people in a building that it might have posed.
Should PHA have given more consideration?
A better job in balancing the scales between the compassion it shows expanding families and the fire hazard that might be posed by having so many people in a building.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. I think PHA did a remarkable job in not only inspecting and making sure that this unit was habitable, the quality of the unit was not in question, the safety of the unit was not in question. I believe that we did what we needed to do in adhere to that.
Some critics, no one wants to break up families, but you have 3 adult mothers with their children there. Some critics say it would have been prudent to maybe move one of the mothers or 2 of the mothers out with their children into a smaller unit and just...
We have absolutely no indication that they wanted to do that. In fact, PHA, when we moved the family in 2011, we moved the family because they were underhoused. We provided them with a larger unit. The question of the family size is one that perhaps, frankly, you guys may not understand. I grew up similarly in a unit with 16 people, right? It's intergeneration. It's a question of perhaps that resonates particularly with Black and brown communities. I'm not surprised by the question, but there will be a postmortem, and right now what we're trying to do, frankly, is to support our family that is grieving. There'll be opportunity to assess whether or not that should have been the case, whether or not we should have moved them even though they didn't want to. We'll have an opportunity to make some adjustments if that is in fact the case.
When it comes to your own procedures for the housing unit, do you guys go through kind of a fire safety evacuation? There was no fire escape in that building, so what do you do for the housing unit?
So these are historic row homes in Philadelphia. I'm not sure if I look around here if we'll be seeing in any of these $1 million homes fire escapes.
But my question is, what's your procedure as the housing
Our procedure.
To go through a fire
Yeah,
evacuation?
we do an HQS inspection. We determine whether or not there are egresses, appropriate egresses, and in this case, like so many of our other units, they were appropriate.
And what were those?
The entrance was perfectly wide enough. We have windows and doors, etc., that folks can leave from.
And
For
so
the people in the back, who is responsible for changing the batteries?
That's an interesting question, sir. So PHA, when we conduct our annual and biannual inspections, we make one of the things that we are that the staff is expected to do is to check the fire alarms, check the carbon monoxide. And as I mentioned in April and May of last year, we not only checked them, we replaced the batteries because the batteries were missing. We replaced.
Not the residents. You, not the residents.
No, the resident is supposed to maintain it. The residents are in fact supposed to make sure that they don't remove the batteries. These are 10-year-old batteries. These are batteries that last 10 years, excuse me.
They're tamper resistant, am I right? These are lithium tamper resistant.
Right, but people, like in so many units, even in private homes, when you're cooking, when you're doing whatever it is that you do, you turn it off, you pull it apart, that happens. And it wasn't the first time that we replaced these equipment. We replaced it before in 2019. We replaced it again in 2021. We added additional equipment in 2021. And I think appropriately so, because when we got to the unit, we observed that the batteries, a couple of the units were missing. So we added new ones with batteries. We reinstalled them and reinstalled batteries.
And so you checked the house with
Yeah.
You checked the smoke detectors. All of them were lithium batteries?
Yes, that's correct.
And how many were on each floor?
I don't have that specific number. I think there were 7, Dinesh, I don't know if you have the specific numbers, but I think there were 7 in one unit.
Smoke detectors.
Smoke detectors.
In Unit A, there were 7.
Can you go to the mic? Sorry, we can't record that.
So in Unit A, there were 7 smoke detectors and 3 carbon monoxide, and in Unit B, there were 6 smoke detectors and 3 carbon monoxide.
And they were all lithium? They were all lithium?
The carbon, yes.
And were they replaced in spring 2021? They were all replaced, the batteries?
No, 2 of them.
Right. No, 2 of the smoke detectors were replaced or reinstalled in 2021.
Okay, but
because
the
they
existing ones, you didn't change the batteries.
we changed the batteries in
No, they were tamper-resistant one. We replaced the whole smoke detectors.
And the other question is, was it the housing authority that renovated this house into 2 different units, or was it already like that when they moved in?
When we got the unit, it was already.
I think we.
It was
I
already
think.
renovated.
Yeah, I think we obtained the unit back in 1970, 69 or thereabouts,
Can you talk more about
and it was a 2-family property.
Can you talk more about the occupancy history of these 2 units? The occupancy history of these 2 units. You mentioned that there was a family of 6 that moved in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Was that
Yeah.
Unit B and
So Unit A, when the family moved in, there were 3 people, and since then they've added 2 additional.
sorry, how many?
3 initially there was only 3 people on the lease, and additionally 2 people were added during the time of recertifications. And in Unit B, it was 5 individuals at the time of lease up in 2011 again, and since then we have had grandchildren added to the lease, and now the officially on the lease is 14 people altogether.
Actually on the lease is 14.
Yes.
Do you know how many were living there during your last inspection?
Not.
That
I'm
would
not.
be based on our recertification. Our recertification indicates 14. It doesn't mean that folks wouldn't have come in or they wouldn't have had visitors, etc. We cannot ascertain whether or not there were what we tend to refer to as unauthorized occupants.
Is there a maximum occupancy for that particular unit?
No.
Your numbers show 20, right? In total, 6 below and 14 above.
That's correct.
20 in total. Fire folks said yesterday said 26 in there. So 6 more than.
Well, again, I don't know how they're able to ascertain that. The authorized number of residents would be the folks who are indicated on our leases, and in both of those units, the combined total should be 20, 6 and 14.
Is it your expectations then that the smoke detectors unfortunately were tampered with, or the batteries were taken out, since they were working when you left them in May?
When we last conducted our inspection, the smoke detectors were in fact working. If the fire marshal determined as a result of this fire that they were not in fact working or they were not in fact operational, it would be that they were tampered with or the batteries were somehow removed. We don't go into units and remove batteries.
Does PHA deploy any additional fire mitigation efforts, like in addition to the carbon monoxide detectors and the smoke detectors? For example, some fire experts say that sprinklers are a good idea for buildings that are this old. Do you have any of that?
No.
Not in our older housing stock.
So not in the scattered sites?
No, not in our older housing stock. In our newer properties, we do have sprinkling systems, and in our high-rise, etc. And those are typically required of code.
I know that there's a maintenance backlog, but are there any plans to get these older buildings up to par with the newer ones, with these wired-in smoke detectors and the sprinklers?
So I would say that there isn't a maintenance backlog. I would say that there is a capital backlog. These are all capital items. And the answer to your question is absolutely yes. That amounts to about $1.5 billion. That is why we were depending on and are looking forward to the enactment of Build Back Better. For us to upgrade all of our scattered site units, all of our older developments, it requires huge investments. These are aging housing stock. that some of which dates back to the 1940s. And the incredible opportunity that will be provided by Build Back Better enactment lies in that. I think, Congressman, the president proposed in the House version some $70 billion. If that is approved, that could mean upwards of $1 billion could come to Philadelphia, not only to address the backlog, but to update all of these units, bring them up to 21st century standards. We need that. We, unfortunately, don't print money at the Philadelphia Housing Authority. We depend on the federal government in large part to fund us. And in some ways, over the last number of decades, the federal government has let us down and has not, in fact, invested at the level that it should have.
You did all of your clients had a rule that if you're going to be in one of our properties and be a client, you have to maintain at least up to 10 years your house.
Well, they signed. You want to talk about that, Dinesh?
So after the inspection, like the ones we were talking about earlier, like the one in April and one in May, there's a tenant acknowledgement form which basically states tenant responsibilities, acknowledging when at the end of inspection they're acknowledging that the smoke detectors and the carbon monoxides that were installed are in fact working, and they are responsible for the upkeep. And if they can't replace or anything, they can call us, and PHA is responsible for replacing them within 24 hours, because this would fall under the category of life safety. So there is a tenant acknowledgement form which all tenants has. Yep. So
this unfortunately, this unfortunately doesn't always happen, right? For all of the reasons that I think are not all too uncommon. Folks take especially ones that are close to the kitchen, if they are smoking, if they're smokers, although we ban smoking in our units, these things do happen. And as I said, this is an incredible, unfortunate tragedy that is an accident, I believe. And I'm looking forward to reading the fire marshal's report. But again, I know that you all want all of the answers, and you want all of the answers today. There are things we don't know. And I'm trying my best to provide you with the answers that I do know, that are factual, and it is as I had indicated. But let's get this very clear. I want to make this abundantly clear. Today, like yesterday, our focus has to be wrapping our arms around this family, this community, the staff who worked on these units, the police and firefighters who came out to see this incredible loss of life. I cannot imagine how Miss McDonald is feeling. Having spoken to her, my heart breaks for her and her family.
Yeah, the new properties that we build are obviously built to code, and they're inspected by L9 before we get the certificate of occupancy. So yes.
I just want to get one thing straight. You said there were 5 members of the family living there in 2011, and you said there were 6 members living there in 2011.
2 different units.
Yeah.
In
when you're referring to the same unit.
No. There is a unit A and a unit B. In unit B, the unit that's suffered the tragedy, when they moved in, there were 6 members.
6 in unit B, yes.
You said that you
I'd say thank you. We just want to say thank you guys for. Thank you. Dinesh, go ahead and tell your title.
Dinesh Indala, Senior Executive Vice President Operations.
Can you spell your first name?
Yes, sorry. Dinesh, and the last name is Indala.
Sorry, the Executive Vice President.
What do you tell residents when they ask you about fire safety? So, for example, this home had the 2 exits that we know about. If there's a fire, you know, and the norm isn't to have a fire escape in these older buildings, are the only options for people to jump out a window or like hope that the main entrances aren't blocked? Like, what does PHA tell residents in case of a fire?
So PHA works closely with our residents on all things, and I just wanted to say thank you guys for coming here today. This is the end of the update, and we'll provide more information as we go. Thank you guys.